Sometimes use the outdoors on my shed actually as an extension of the fridge. You know, if you can't get it all in the fridge, and I can't leave it outside the back door because the foxes and the squirrels would get it. But having your veg al fresco is not necessarily a bad idea.
No, absolutely, and one's turkey sometimes resides there for a couple of days as well, firmly locked up.
Yeah, well, quite. It would have to be locked up. I couldn't do that here. I mean, there wouldn't be a turkey left.
No, absolutely. The foxes are feral.
It's a brand new day. Gotta take it on my way. Gotta take it on my way.
Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show.
It's a brand new day. Gotta take it on my way. Gotta take it on my way.
We are now live, Judith, back in London. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, more to the point? Are you feeling lagged or normal again?
No, I'm not really lagged. We got on a night flight, which was the first time I've done that. So we got on the plane about 10 o'clock at night and we slept most of the journey, which is actually much more bearable because 10 hours is quite a long time on a plane. And then when I got home, it was dark, which was a bit confusing to my brain. It was sort of light, you know, it was about 3 or 4 in the afternoon and it lasted about an hour. And then I drove home in the dark from where I parked my car. And then Phoebe came over and we spent the evening watching TV and stuff. Then I went to bed and I went to bed, managed to get to sleep at 1, woke up at, about 11 in the morning. And that was Sunday. So I think that also helped, the fact that it was, no weekday. So you didn't feel you had to do something. And then Sunday night, went to bed as normal, woke up as normal. And I've been absolutely right back in the time zone since. So whether combination of the weekend and the night flight, I think it worked rather well. So, but I definitely did oversleep this morning. So I was here half an hour ago prepping, of course, but I had set my alarm for 7 and then slept right through it. So.
Well, every other Wednesday I have to get up for the 0800 call, as I call it, with my Small Business Big Magic, and that's today. I've done that today, and wrenching myself out of my cosy bed this morning was challenging because, of course, the temperatures dropped in the UK for the first time this winter. In the last week or 10 days, it's now quite chilly.
Yeah, it is, and I've had to actually shut my bedroom window, which I normally sleep open.
Well, me too. I had a bit of window last night. I start off without it, but then I invariably have to open it in the night sometimes. But I was sitting here for the last few days thinking, why am I so cold? I've actually had to crank it all off a bit here.
Yeah. So I think that was the cause of my oversleep, actually, because the heating kicked in with the window.
Yes, and, I know what you mean. We call that going into a coma. Yeah.
You dream of crossing deserts and things.
You're the second person today to tell me about your dreams.
So there you go. So let's talk about our respective weeks then. What's happened to you this week?
Oh, mine is not glamorous at all, I'm afraid. It's a little bit early in the morning for this, but I will tell you anyway. I've been busting a few tolerations. There's something that happens where I live. It's quite a funny story, this, actually. Well, no, there's a coincidence bit in this. I share a drain with my next door neighbour, which I think is quite common in the UK. And it's good news because it means that when the drain gets bunged up, it's Thames Water's responsibility to clear it, not either of ours, because we don't own it individually, we share it. And suffice to say that my next door neighbour and I, who are both on the ground floor, when the drains get bunged up, we know first. Now, I won't be any more explicit. I won't be any more explicit than that. Suffice to say that there have been drains. And my brother phoned on Monday, said, "How are you?" I said, "Oh, my drains are blocked up." And said, "So am I." So the Morgans have had blocked drains this week. So busting tolerations. And the good news is that during the inspection about the drains, I discovered that the fence panels that have blown down over the Christmas holidays are not my responsibility. They're my next door neighbours. So that is marvellous news. Thames Water are going to fix the drains, and the next door neighbour is going to fix the broken fence panels. Does it get much better than that?
No, it doesn't from a financial point of view, as long as they actually do the things they're supposed to do.
Well, I think they are going to. I've had an email this morning. I think the drains have either healed themselves or Thames Water have been round in the middle of the night. And I've had an email this morning confirming about the fence panels, so we're all right there. Good.
No, well, I'm jolly glad to hear it.
Important to keep on the right side of your neighbours, you know, Nicola.
Oh, absolutely, because otherwise, if relations break down and communications break down with your neighbours, then you really are in trouble.
Right.
I woke up to my I had a Tesco delivery yesterday, Judith, because I'm following your regime, and there was a missing bag of vegetables, which is actually the only reason I did a Tesco shop, because I had no vegetables. And I was going out for the evening to the jazz, and with my sisters and the daughters came too, their first experience of a jazz evening, which was highly amusing. But anyway, the Tesco's man had obviously come round and delivered my vegetables either to a neighbour, or he'd found his way down the alley, round the back under the tree, and into my back garden. I suspect it was a neighbour, actually. He must have dropped it there, and they must have done it. Because my missing vegetables were sitting neatly on a chair outside my back door this morning, waiting.
I found my vegetables.
Yes, they have a rivet. What's the French word for vegetables? Le vegetables. It's a rivet. I don't know why I came all over French there, but never mind.
No, but there you are.
So, and I've got a glass back door, luckily, so they didn't sit there rotting for days before I found them.
Sometimes use the outdoors, or my shed actually, as an extension of the fridge. You know, if you can't get it all in the fridge, and I can't leave it outside the back door because the foxes and the squirrels would get it. But having your veg al fresco is not necessarily a bad idea.
No, absolutely, and one's turkey sometimes resides there for a couple of days as well, firmly locked up.
Yeah, well, quite. It would have to be locked up. I couldn't do that here. I mean, there wouldn't be a turkey left.
No, absolutely. The foxes are feral. So my week then has mainly been getting over the jet lag, taking days to unpack, and still getting over the cruise lurgy cough, as you can hear, in fact. So it's all right. It's much better than it was, but it makes you wonder how to avoid it when you next go travelling, because aircon is ubiquitous everywhere now, isn't it?
Yes. Once I'm settled in St Martin, I don't always need the aircon on because, of course, I like it hot. I like it hot. You do need it on when you need to think or work, but if you're just chilling, I just sometimes like it. I quite like to sit there and go, oh, it's so hot. I quite like that.
But the aircon in one single dwelling is fine, isn't it? But it's when you're in a cruise ship, for example, where the aircon's sharing it, or an aeroplane where the aircon's shared with everyone.
Oh, I think you're right. The aeroplane, grim. Germs bound to happen. Ships, not going to be my thing, so I'm not worried about ships.
Yeah. Hotels,
yes.
so they share aircon. Even though I was on the 27th floor and I did have a window I could open, which was a little bit disconcerting. There was, you're still airconned, aren't you? So it's how to avoid it and how to travel without getting these blooming awful bugs that you don't get when you're at home.
Yeah.
Although, having said that, a mutual friend of ours has had horrendous flu for the last 2 weeks, so there is a nasty flu going around in the UK, regardless of whether you go out of your house or not.
Well, I'm glad we're just speaking virtually then.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I'm catching anymore. But the thing that I've been reflecting on this week is the whole digital nomad thing, because I'm due to go off again in 3 weeks, and I'm not absolutely sure if I can handle it. I did realise that there would be that small gap, and I did think to myself, I can always not go if I don't want to. But I did meet quite a few digital nomads on my travels, and these are people who work and live from home. And in fact, I met one couple who I know quite well, and they're travelling with a 12-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they're homeschooling the 12-year-old's being homeschooled. And the wife was telling me how brilliant it was because, he's got his own virtual classroom, his own virtual teachers. She's not having to do it. In other words, there's a good backup system now for homeschooling teens on the move. And the 4-year-old obviously hasn't started yet. But I was thinking, my God, how much organisation must it take to move 4 people around regularly, and and just the emotional impact of that, because I'm now contemplating going away again in 3 weeks' time after I've just been away for 3 weeks, and it's quite an exhausting thought, all that packing and unpacking and living out of a suitcase thing. So how do you do?
I don't think it would suit me at all. I think 2 homes, I'm either here or I'm there, and I don't need to. I've got stuff there, so all I need on the plane is my passport. That's it, really. I couldn't do what they're doing.
No, the other couple I know that do it, they have a base. They have an office with a virtual assistant, but their office is near to one of their families. So if, for example, they need things shipping out to them, it can be shipped out to the hotel they're going to. If they need to send stuff home because they're perhaps getting over their luggage allowance, they can just FedEx stuff home. So they do have an office space, which I think makes life a lot easier.
Yes, I definitely would want one of those.
Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, well, I won't, because one of my word of the week, I don't want to preempt that, but it's a whole different mind shift completely. That whole living.
When you're going in 3 weeks' time, I've forgotten, you're going to Australia?
I'm supposed to be going to Australia. Let's not commit myself yet.
No. We need to make a plan, you and I, because we've lost our one in hand, haven't we?
Yeah.
And if you're going away again, we need to do a couple of weeks on each of the next 3 weeks, I think.
Well, yeah. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, because I haven't maybe made it up yet, and the flight's looking rather prohibitive because I've left it rather late. So. So, what's fueled your fire this week, then, Judith?
Well, a little bit of excitement in my group this week. The calls I get up for on the 0800 ones, as I call them, on Wednesday mornings, are for my Small Business Big Magic group. And one of our members are scattered all over the UK and Europe, but we have an American member called Margaret, who we all love very much. And Margaret's coming to England to see us all and play cash flow in September.
Oh, wow.
And bringing a husband who likes football. And they're staying in an Airbnb in Wandsworth, and we're all a little bit excited about this.
Well, I just think you are someone who's willing to up the sticks and come and just.
Yeah, we're going to. Well, I think I don't kid myself. She's coming to see us, but obviously that's a bonus. But I think they're coming on holiday to London, and he likes football, English football, or soccer, or whatever we call our. What do we call our football here? Football.
We call it football, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. He watches our football on his telly over there, so he's going to. She asked me a few weeks ago, would he be what football clubs would he be able to get to easily from London? Oh, well, quite a lot.
Yeah.
And so he's going to have a lovely time watching football, and they're going to go to Cornwall and the Cotswolds, and they're changing planes in Reykjavik in Iceland, so they're going to have a little break there as well, which I think is an exciting idea. But anyway, we're all excited because Margaret, our American friend, is coming to England to play with us.
See, that's interesting, isn't it? Because that would absolutely fill my heart with dread.
Yeah, but Margaret's such a lovely person, it wouldn't.
Okay.
It wouldn't.
Okay. Because whenever people, I meet people obviously in America, and they all say, "Oh, I'm coming to London," blah, and I think, "Oh God."
Yeah, but this lady's a client and has been for 2 years, and we've got a relationship, and she's done websites for some of the people in the group, and we've never met her, and she's always, I've met some of the others. And so it'll be a chance for us to meet Margaret and also to have a little get together. Yeah. So it's exciting. I know what you're saying, but Margaret's such a lovely person.
No, it's not even about that. It's not even about the person themselves, because all the people are invariably lovely. It's the whole getting home from London after I've spent the evening with them business that I don't like. So
well, that's not my problem, is it? You see, no. Because they're all coming to my house.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In the spirit of hermetism that we are embracing.
Yeah, but also her Airbnb is in Wandsworth, which is probably walking distance from here, so yeah. I'm not worried about that either. Yeah. But yes, I know what you mean. Getting home from London, grim, horrid.
Well, I think I'm going to have to utilise something that I'm going to share with you in the Who or What's Impressed.
Okay.
I'm dropping little teasers, you may notice.
You are. I am noticing. Tell me, first of all, what's fueled your fire?
Right, well, much as I hate to bang on about something I've spoken about before, and I am trying to do that less and less now by making notes and things, Snapchat is continuing to rise in the social lexicon. It's an interesting one because I used it when I was away. I Snapchatted everything first, little videos or pictures. I annotated them, and you have to remember to pull the annotation down so it doesn't go straight over the content of your picture. And then what you do is you save it to your phone if it's very good, or you just add it to your story, as they call it, if it's just something fun but not worth saving. And then you can upload from there from your phone to Instagram if it's something you really do want to save. And then I had it set up so that Zapier, Zapier.com, sent it out from Instagram to my personal profile on Facebook, my page on Facebook, various other pages on Facebook, my LinkedIn, and my Twitter. So it was the most efficient way of sharing my holiday pictures to all the people. The kids would never have seen it if I put it on Instagram or Facebook, because they just use Snapchat pretty much now. But the interesting thing about Snapchat is it's a closed circuit. So only your people who you have requested you as a friend and accepted you as a friend can see your stories. So that's an interesting one because it's a closed circle. So everyone's in the marketing world. Gary Vaynerchuk's invested in them, so he's really banging the drum. Lots of other big marketers are using it more than Periscope, because everyone found that Periscope was very annoying with its constant notifications of people going live. And it's, whereas with Snapchat, you can just watch someone's 24-hour story if you're interested in what their life looks like. So, but Cliff Ravenscraft has done, I'm not actually sure who he is, but I recognise the name when I saw it. He's done a Snapchat tutorial on YouTube on how to use Snapchat to grow your audience. And I think it's much more about interacting one-to-one with people. So you encourage your followers on all the other platforms to come and follow you on Snapchat. And basically you're getting a much more one-to-one personal look at people's lives. And the good thing about Snapchat, obviously, is that it only lasts for 24 hours. So in 24 hours, your picture is gone, your video is gone. So if you do something that's not perhaps on brand, or, you're a little bit embarrassed about afterwards, like working out in the gym yesterday, which is something I did, it's going to be gone in 24 hours. And I've sent you a link, Judith, to the Cliff Ravenscraft tutorial. So if anyone's listening and wondering what Snapchat is all about, there is a link in the show notes. And this is show 67, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, so if you come to ownitthepodcast.com and look for show number 67, then you'll find the link to the Cliff Ravenscraft tutorial on Snapchat. So that's fueled my fire. I don't know why I'm fired up about it, but I am. But I'll let you know as soon as I find out.
Okay.
But first, a word from our sponsors.
I've been helping clients enjoy happier lives for nearly 40 years, during which time I've enjoyed thousands of conversations with human beings in all their infinite variety. It makes a big difference to have someone with whom you can share things you might not have told another living soul, perhaps not even admitted to yourself. A confidant, an ally, a secret weapon. Now, I've created Big Talk so that I can help you create a wonderful life through a series of significant conversations. You talk and I give you a damn good listening to. Our calls will raise your vibration and clear out all that stands between you and what you want. Big Talk will reshape your life, your work, your business, your ideas and your money. We'll talk about anything and everything. Visit judithmorgan.com to find out more about Big Talk and prepare for your magical transformation.
So, client challenge of the week then.
Yes, you've been challenged, Vance.
Yes, I have. I've never really worried much about my reputation online because I've never really decided. I decided very early on to live my life out loud, as it were, as Laurel Langmeyer says. So I've always been very careful not to do anything online that I wouldn't want shared. I think I had one occasion where I perhaps had too many glasses of wine and made one comment on Twitter once, but I was able to go and delete it in time, luckily. But apart from that, I've largely lived the last 15 years online openly. But I had a challenge in that I was driving across America and someone Skyped me and said, did you know that so-and-so is talking about you in their webinar? And they showed a picture of your website and they showed your price packages for clicksandleads.com. And they're telling everyone on the call that you outsource your Facebook ads to the Philippines. So you're charging X and you're paying X and you're hiring talent in the Philippines to actually do the work. And I was actually quite cross about this because this person is selling mentoring, internet marketing mentoring, and she was holding me up as an example of someone who was selling one thing and, for a high price and then outsourcing to the Philippines cheaply. Now, none of us have a problem with that except for the fact that it's not true. I did a lot of training. I paid thousands and thousands of dollars to learn from different sources how to do what I do. And I am, in fact, training to UK people, and not because the Philippine people aren't any good, but because they culturally, they tend to be exceptionally good at following tasks. But doing Facebook ads requires a degree of copywriting skill. It requires a degree of creativity in that you have to choose pictures that are going to grab the eye and various other things. So it didn't even occur to me to outsource it. And I certainly haven't gone and looked for Facebook ad experts in the Philippines, if indeed such things exist. So I was a bit cross about this, as you can imagine. So I sent a cease and desist email, but I talked to the boys when we were on the road about how best to handle this, because it is someone I know quite well and like. So I sent an amused cease and desist notice, just saying basically cease and desist bracket, let's make some money, because I said, if you're willing to edit this, we could then do a joint venture where we hold a webinar where I explain exactly how I'm doing this, and then we offer my program, which is where I teach people how to set up their own digital agency with a turnkey version of my business. So it was quite a strong email, but it was also holding out the olive branch at the end if they're willing to edit. This person denied it, that she'd even mentioned me in any of her webinars, and I know that's not true, because the person who told me actually quoted directly from the webinar and told me exactly what had been said. But there was a co-webinar host, so I went and contacted them as well, and they admitted it straight away, and actually said they were on their way to London to to present to a big company, GKEC or GCEK. It sounds like a big company anyway, big corporate. And he said, my slides, the slides containing me, were actually in his deck as he was on the train. So I was like, oh, okay. So I then said, well, I'm not happy about you saying I outsourced to the Philippines. Can you change that one slide before you do your presentation, please? And by the way, we could do a joint venture if you're willing to edit. So I'm waiting to hear the outcome of that. And he did quite freely say that they had talked about me, and there were slides containing screenshots of my website. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because businesses often wonder about how to manage their reputation online, and there is limited recourse, because obviously legally you can only enforce legally what you're willing to pursue and pay to pursue. And I'm certainly, not about to go to a solicitor. I would have
had they meant to be complimentary. Were they saying, look, here's an example of you buy in A, you sell at B, and you make the profit in between?
I don't know, Judith, but they possibly. But the point was that they were selling.
Oh, I get the point. They're misrepresenting the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also they were using a misrepresentation of the truth to sell their own program.
Yes.
Their own.
I'm not sure whether they knew. I'm just trying to work out whether it was malevolence at work or an accident.
Oh, I definitely don't think there was any malevolence at work. I think they really genuinely were using me as an example, which is one reason.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want them to take me out entirely.
No.
What do they say? No, bad publicity is better than no publicity.
Well, I mean, that happens on the television quite a lot, where I see people being absolute numpties, but it doesn't seem to matter to them or the audience.
But the other thing is, the other example of this recently is my daughter works for a very well-known local gastropub. And it's sort of, gastropub, not the top end, but the sort of medium to bottom end. But a mutual friend of ours redid their website recently, and the people who own the pub said, is there anything you could do about getting us off TripAdvisor? And because we've had a malicious review attack, and so basically someone they sacked for being a useless barmaid got all her girlfriends to go and do crap reviews of the pub. And TripAdvisor apparently is really important in the hospitality trade, but all of your bad reviews, I'm not sure if they show first, but they are definitely highlighted. So when you go and look at this pub on the TripAdvisor, it's a string of not true bad reviews. And there's no way, our friend who's very good online, he found out that there's no way that you can change a review on TripAdvisor, and there's no way you can take yourself off TripAdvisor. So it's not a voluntary thing you sign up for or pay for. It's something you're.
Yes, it's third-party reviews, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's no way to get rid of it.
It's consumers ostensibly reporting their experience. I don't know how seriously people take it, but I know that if you're in the trade, as you're saying, they take it very seriously, because, as I mentioned to you before, Liz, who's got the B&B in Austria, if somebody, the majority of her reviews are 5 stars. If you get a 4-star, that impacts you much more than you and I would think. Yeah, it does. It drags down your overall score horrendously. And so she always is very abstemious about going to those people and trying to put things right so that they can, think about maybe improving it. Yeah, exactly.
There's one more example I want to give you before we talk about how you can then deal with bad reviews. The other, well, there's a couple of others actually. It's a good idea to buy your name and the word scam. If you're in internet marketing anyway, or you're in anything where someone might take against you and want to damage your reputation, it's a good idea to go and buy your name fraud, your name scam. I mean, I hate the idea of this because it's so negative, but it stops someone else being able to do it. And there was a copywriter recently who did some high paid copywriting for someone and didn't deliver the goods, and didn't deliver anything that was usable. And this person went and just put up a website outing him basically for being someone who took a lot of money and then didn't deliver, and wouldn't give the money back. So he bought this person's name and the word scam. And a lot of people, I never do it. I never go and search someone's name plus the word scam, but apparently a lot of people do in marketing and online resources and MLM, and particularly. So it's a real challenge, that one. And if you want to secure your name, you might want to do it. But the final example is there's a website. Now I don't know what it's called, but there's a website. It was mentioned on an episode of Reply All, which is from the Gimlet Media Studio. Go and have a look at Reply All by Gimlet Media if you're interested in this. And there's a website. It's something like ripoff.com or something like that. And again, it's a bit like TripAdvisor, but anyone can go and put anything about anyone on there, and the organizer of it flatly refuses to remove a bad review of you or your business. And apparently he's been running this site for so long, it's got monster attention from the search engine. So anything on that site is going to come up ahead of you on Google if anyone searches. Say, for example, even if you're a little business in, I don't know, Utah or somewhere, his site review of your business is going to come up ahead of anything else you do. So the whole Reply All episode was about the distress this caused to a girl who again had a malicious review. So I think there's got to be some kind of, at some point there's going to have to be some kind of regulation of these sites, because it must be really, really disheartening if you're a business and people are going around saying things about you online and you've got no right of reply. At least on the TV, you've got the right of reply, haven't you?
I think it happens in real life as well, is that there are always people who will badmouth other people, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And the two examples I can think of is when you get sacked, and when you get chucked, as we used to call it, when your boyfriend dumps you.
Oh yeah.
And when you lose a job. Now, I always, it's easy to jump to the conclusion, if you get chucked, you were the one in the wrong, and if you get sacked, you were the one in the wrong. But I always think to myself, well, I only know one side of the story there.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a website called Glassdoor, which I'm just looking for now, which is it's basic. Oh, here we are. Glassdoor helps you find a job and company you love. Reviews, salaries and benefits from employees. Interview questions from candidates. So basically, it's an inside view into different companies. And apparently, again, disgruntled ex-employees are going along and putting all sorts of things on Glassdoor about the company that the company has then got no comeback about. So there's all these reviews of working at companies from people who no longer work at the companies and can say anything they like, which seems funny, but actually, again, I don't see that's any different than the TripAdvisor thing. I think that there will always be two sides to every story. Now, you and I both know that historically, the view we've taken is that you do the best you can in your work and you try to own everything, your reputation online yourself. And what you're saying now is that these big sites would be highly visible, whereas there is a Judith Morgan scam. It's not me, but there's some other person that happens to have the same name as me who attempted to use it to take money off people. And I just have to live with that because it's not me and there's nothing I can do about it. And there was that time that journalist conned me. Do you remember, over the lease options thing, and then wrote a piece about it? Well, you can find that on page, I don't know, 197 or something. Now it's dropped down. But there's nothing you can do about other people seeing the world
differently from you, except rise above it, take the moral advantage, I always think.
Yeah, and the other thing you can do is make sure that you have every single version of your name secured. For example, I've just put in Nicola Cairncross scam, and there is one thing from 2011 when the property market crashed and we were all being tarred with horrid brushes by the property investing world, because of an association we had. But after that, everything is mine. So what the next thing down is one of my blog posts. The next thing down is my website. The next thing down is my book. The next thing down is my LinkedIn profile. The next thing down is reviews. There's the podcast, my old podcast. There's lots of my blog posts. There's stuff on my sister's website. There's a few things I wouldn't necessarily want to be associated with, but they're very much weighed out by the stuff that I've produced. So I think that's the first step in your online reputation is go and make sure that your name, as much as possible, you've got it on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn. And even if you're only just putting up a holding page, for example, you're just putting up a link to your, if you say your name is not your business name, your Judith Morgan XYZ Limited, and everything, all of your other social media stuff is in XYZ Limited. Just make sure you've got your name on all the social media platforms and you've at least got links to your main website on them, because that will go a long way to controlling your reputation online.
Mm.
And
But the truth is, if somebody wants to misrepresent you or bring you down or slag you off, they can.
yes. And in the olden days, it was slander and libel, wasn't it? Is it slander if it's spoken about you and libel if it's written about you?
I'm not sure. I would have to Google that.
Yeah, but because I've got that other example, haven't I, where there's someone who I upset about 10 years ago I don't even remember doing it, but she's going around telling people that they shouldn't work with me. But luckily, there's enough people out there telling people they should work with me that it outweighs what she's saying.
Yeah, I think I've got at least one of those examples.
Yeah. Well, you think there's someone going around talking about you?
I do, and I what I wish is that if that person would just come to me and we could put it right. But I've got no evidence to support this, so I might be being paranoid.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the other option, the other challenge in this situation is, what if the person concerned who is denying mentioning me in the webinar? I've actually got the other person sending me a copy of the webinar, so I will be able to check that. But what if they then ask about the identity of the person who rumbled them? Obviously you've then got a duty to keep that person's identity secret. It's all
well, you have if you're a journalist, but I don't think there's anything that could stop them working it out or whatever.
Well, they've got the list of the people who registered for their webinar. Quite. Yeah. But then presumably there were hundreds of people, and they have no idea which person is likely to have let me know. But
I think people are strange, and there was an incident that I had a few years back where a very high-profile person agreed to be in a project of mine, and I wrote a blog post about it. And one of his ardent fans brought the blog post to his attention and said, "Have you seen that she's doing this?" And then that caused the high-profile person to get the wobbles and pull out, completely on a misunderstanding.
No. Yeah, that must have been upsetting.
Well, and it still rankles now, as I describe it to you, because actually the thing I find most upsetting is being misunderstood.
Yes. Yeah, you don't like it at all, do you?
No.
I don't think anyone does, actually. I think it makes everyone feel a bit hurt and
Yeah, I think if one's intentions are honourable and you want to be highly thought of, I think actions speak louder than words. I think if you do most of your work mostly right most of the time, most people will think well of you, and that's all you can do, really. I hear what you're saying, which is I'm never going to buy a URL with scam written on the end of it. It's too
negative.
As you said, it's just too negative. It's like inviting the problem into your life, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a little bit. Because what you think about, you attract, as we know very well.
However, if I was an internet marketing guru and a bloke, I probably would do that, because I think their worldview can afford to be darker than mine.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're, yeah, I mean, I don't think of myself in the internet marketing world.
No, I agree. But you can think of some of those high rollers, can't you? That where people would be disgruntled, they bought something, it didn't work, quote unquote, and they want revenge or slagging people. I mean, there are some horrible people in the world. If I was a bloke in that space, I would buy it because A, he wouldn't be as sensitive as me. B, he would expect it as a business risk, and C, he'd be prepared.
Yeah, exactly. There is one person online who is quite cynically and callously taking people's money and not delivering anything of value at all. And everyone was talking about it on the boat and saying, how can we stop? Who can stop this guy taking innocent people's money and not delivering anything of value? And everyone was saying the problem is that once you've been scammed, you're often too embarrassed to talk about it. So some of the people on the boat had actually signed up for this guy's mentoring program and had actually, really got nothing from it. And it really was, not delivering what it promised to deliver. But they were all chalking it up to experience and too embarrassed to talk about it. So,
but he didn't have a money back guarantee.
Well, he did, but he never honours it.
Oh, right. Okay.
So he really is scamming people and cynically doing it, on an ongoing basis. So there was a lot of talk about, should we be forming an internet marketing association, a European marketing association? What should we do to clean up the perception of the industry? So that was quite interesting. And there was a very good friend of ours, mine, who actually got scammed for an awful lot of money from one person, and he wasn't one of those people who was embarrassed to admit it because he felt that the person had been, had acted wrongly, and he actually pursued an active campaign of finding other victims online, and then they all brought, a lawsuit against this person, and actually he ended up being arrested in the end. So, but you have to be able to step above your own perceived stupidity or naivety and think, no, just because I didn't know any better doesn't give that person the right to take my money.
Yes, I think in life, there's always one thing that will cause you to become litigious because the principles at stake are too precious.
Yes, yeah. It's a painful.
But most of the time, I think we don't have the energy or the resources for it.
No, and that's a really good point, because fighting things sometimes, we both have met people who are so caught up in fighting, righting perceived wrongs from the past that they just can't get past that, can they? They spend all their energy trying to make something right that really where they should be just releasing their energy, letting it go. We all cue for a song.
Well, there was that wonderful bit at the end of, I think, volume 1. It might have been volume 2 of Chris Evans' autobiography, where he said if he had his time over again, he wouldn't have done the lawsuit with Virgin.
Yeah.
Was it Virgin or the BBC? I can't remember. Somebody sued him, or he sued somebody, or whatever, and it sucked up, I don't know, more than a year of his life and an enormous amount of his cash.
Yeah. And
he said, if I had my time over, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. So so hopefully my personal situation is going to have a positive outcome in the fact that they both seem, the one who's admitting they were mentioning me seems willing to edit the slides and edit the webinar, in fact, which is great, because then I've got, I'm being painted in a good light and getting.
I think that is great, and I think that's always the solution one would want to reach. If you discover that somebody's saying something about you that isn't true, and they're prepared to correct their error, then you're both laughing, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly, and especially then if you could then go on to offer a product to that person's audience, which is an ethical product, then we all end up making money, which will be marvellous.
Yeah.
So there you go, bit of a neg one this week, sorry, but I think it's important for people to know that their reputation can be protected to some degree, and even where you've got no recourse. I mean, what I've said to my friend who's looking after the pub is to go and get a lot, really work on getting lots of positive reviews, because eventually that will drive down and bring the image back up again.
I agree. Yeah.
Work positively to overcome the situation.
Mm.
What's your word of the week then?
Well, I prepared for this call yesterday, and my word of the week is beginning to look today rather like wishful thinking. But the word that I chose yesterday was spring, because
please.
I had sunshine and birdsong. Today I've got a high wind and it's overcast and cold. But anyway, spring. I thought spring was sprung yesterday. Now I'm not so sure.
Yeah, well, I thought spring was sprung yesterday as we drove to the gym and it was all lovely. But then I realised that it was a false illusion and that it was about to get cold again. Because we came out of the gym and, you get very hot at the gym. I don't know why that is. You sweat buckets afterwards and getting dressed is quite hard work. So I actually took a pair of flip-flops to put on afterwards because I couldn't bear the thought of putting socks and shoes on. And by the time we got home, we were both regretting that bitterly.
Yes, freezing cold. Yes, you do get hot, but I think after exercise you can chill down quite quickly as well. That's why they have them all wrapped in foil blankets on the marathon day, isn't it, to keep them warm after they stop.
Absolutely. My word of the week is transformed, because I do hope that my travels have transformed me a bit. And I saw a beautiful quote from a friend of my daughter's who's actually been travelling, in doing the whole Bali, India, Australia thing. And the quote was, we travel because we need to, because distance and difference are the secret tonic to creativity. When we get home, home is still the same, but something in our minds has changed, and that changes everything.
I think that's a very nice concept. I do think that's why we travel, actually. And it's interesting that what we also love about home is that it's the same. And sometimes if you're a bit of a traveller and you come home and home is changed, you're not very happy about it.
No, absolutely. And that's why teenagers who go off travelling and then the parents use the opportunity to move house don't like it very much.
No, exactly. And I think, the teenager will come home forever transformed by their travelling experiences as well.
Yeah, and it's like you can understand why people who've just broken up in a relationship go on holiday, because it's the biggest jolt to getting you out of your day-to-day routine, which must help you get over things.
And I also think you get a perspective, don't you? You can look back at your real life, quote unquote, and see it from outside rather than from inside.
Yeah, so I'm quite hoping, because I did dread coming home and sitting in my little dining room on my own again. But actually, I came home and it's not so bad at all. It's rather nice, because I have changed by being away for three weeks and driving across America. So I'm looking forward to see how those changes play out over the next few months.
Yes, you're transformed.
I am indeed. What's your project updates then?
Well, nothing at all this week, actually, and I'll tell you why. It's half term.
Oh, yeah.
And the two things I told you about last week, the JVs I'm negotiating to do, I'm waiting on both of those parties and I'm being patient. And it's a good reminder before I start with either of them of something that you and I know, which is when you're in partnership with other people, sometimes you have to wait on other people.
Yes, and that can be quite frustrating.
It can be when you're used to doing what we do, which is fast start, take control, go off and do it yourself. And it's a good reminder before I go into business with two other people that in both I'll be the junior partner, and therefore I will be reliant on them setting the pace.
That could be quite restful.
I think it'll be a nice change, and I've reframed it like that this week, Nicola.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I've done. Yes, I've gone, instead of driving everything, Judith, you can allow it to come to you.
You can dance with it instead of driving.
Yes, I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting. So I'm in a waiting place this week.
So
I'm okay. I think you can tell by the tone of my voice. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So are they in the half-term maelstrom that is the thing?
Well, one of them is a parent of young children, and her business is designed to work around half term. So I know she's in half term. And also, I think in my business as a whole, I can see it's half term. My inbox is quieter, Facebook is quieter. You can see people are out and about with the kids doing things rather than sitting at home talking about it. The other guy, I wasn't expecting him to be as quick as this, but he sent me a nice email, holding me, as it were.
Oh, that's nice. So you're not just left dangling. He's put you on.
No, there's no dangling in either of these. There's just waiting. Yeah.
There's just a holding pattern rather than dangling.
Yeah.
Much.
Yeah. No dangling.
Well, I'm looking forward to just getting, breaking the back of the stuff that piles up while you're away. Although I've got to say, my team were brilliant while I was away. Everything got done that needed to get done. Although we did have a little hiccup with the podcast last week because
Yeah, but we sorted it. Yeah, she was poorly. And 24 hours later, nobody emailed in. I suspect because it was the first weekend of half term. There you go.
well, yes, I don't know if their half times are the same in Portugal, but I think she actually was in the hospital, my VA, without anyone realising.
She was no. She said she was poorly. Yeah.
So, but so obviously because either I could have done what needed to be done, or Sarah could have done what needed to be done. So all it would have required was an email, but perhaps she was just too ill to even email.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think that was the end of the world. I really don't. I emailed her and she replied within 24 hours saying that she'd been poorly and she rectified it immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I'd also contacted because I knew it hadn't gone out, but I was in a situation where I couldn't do anything about it at the time. So
No.
and I didn't even have time to email. So yeah, but it makes you think about your systems when things like that happen. So I'm just going to be reviewing my systems. So what I'm looking forward to most after the initial flurry of being back is the fact that the team are building nicely, and so that frees me up now because I've got a very small number of products that fit together now. So, for example, I've got a Facebook ads course, I've got the Facebook ads service, and I've got if you want to build a Facebook ads agency. So 3 things basically, mentoring and coaching, a product, and a service, and they're all very tightly knit together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and I'm going to examine all my autoresponders in my sequence and make sure they're all speaking coherently about just those 3 things. And I'm going to start, split testing again because Minesh, our friend, he's just coming up with some astonishing results by using Visual Website Optimizer, VWO.com, which, he just changed the wording on one of his buttons. And he was converting to a webinar registration at something like 24%, and by changing the wording on one of his buttons, he's increased that to 40%. So if you think about that, that's out of every 100 people, only 25 were hitting the button to even put their name and email in to register. So you have to hit the button first that brings up the form, and then now he's got 40 people out of 100 hitting the button to bring up the form. That's just making huge difference on the back end to the sales he's making. So what I'm very keen to do now is, now I've got everything settled on what I'm doing for the next few years. Do you hear me? Hear me say that?
Yes.
I now want to go back to the beginning of the funnel and look at all my opt-in pages and my follow-up emails and make sure everything's coherent, because it may not be.
Very good.
And that's a fun project for me, Judith. I know it sounds.
Yes, I know. Honestly, I wasn't fooled for a moment. I knew that was fun.
You know how desperate I am to get to it.
Yeah.
Who or what's impressed then?
Right, well, I'm going to tell you about a client this week, but I'm not going to mention their name for privacy reasons. It's a writer who's working on book 2, who has a full-time day job, and she's recently suffered a bereavement, and there are ongoing health concerns in her family and of her own. She is a writer, as I've said, with a full-time day job, but despite the full-time day job and all of those challenges and worries, she's still written a blog this week, got a newsletter out, and I can see her on social media. And shall I tell you what she does? She does it in her lunchtime at her day job. And she still has a life. So evenings and weekends, I know that she does things that she loves with family and friends. And I'm just amazed by somebody with that much commitment, I suppose.
Yeah, that is astonishing, because an hour is not long, is it?
No, it's not long, no. And you've got to be very focused then, haven't you, if you know you're going to do it in an hour. I might think in a job, I'm not sure I'd have the energy for that, honestly.
Yeah, because you only got time to go down to the canteen or out to the shop,
That's it.
Sandwich, and come back and eat it, and that's the end of the hour done.
That's right.
I'm impressed too. Very, very, especially if she's got health challenges as well. That's really, and she's writing.
just a little health scare of her own,
Yeah.
but her mum's a bit poorly, and her close friend's mum's a bit poorly. Which means you reach that stage of life where everybody's mum starts to be a bit poorly.
Yeah.
And there are funerals and things, and she's had a loss of her own, which saddened her a lot. Despite all of that, and despite a full-time job, she's still making progress in the work she and I are doing together, and it's that of a writer, and she's on her second book. I think that's impressive.
That's deeply impressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Little tip of the hat to that person.
Yes, quite. And you?
Well, two things. One is a new app called Priceline that I've come across, which is a bit like it's a hotels and flights and car hire app that one of the digital nomads that we travelled with was using, and we stayed in Marriott's and Hilton's and all sorts of amazing places for usually about $80 a night as we went across America. And so the Priceline app it's a bit like lastminute.com, but I think it's much more industrial strength. I think it's got a lot more deals from a lot more places on it. So check out the Priceline app if you do any travelling. We never went without a really good bed to sleep in, although it did take us to the haunted bordello on one occasion. So it didn't play us foul though. It was a 3-star bordello. And then the other thing is I'm reading a book called The 12-Week Year. Get more done. Now I know you're going to say this sounds exhausting, but that's not.
No. I knew you were reading this because I saw you post something from it yesterday, and I got my calculator out and I tried to work out whether the 4-hour work week constituted a 12-week year. I thought it was quite a fascinating idea.
But it's by Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington. And it's not about what you think it is, which is working, only 12 weeks of the year. It's about, it builds on the traction concept, where the traction concept where you set your goals and then you break it down into 90-day chunks. It's exactly the same thing. It's about people who set goals every, as if every 12-week period was a year, and who focus on those goals more is closer to them. They achieve much more than people do in a year, because there's something psychologically about setting annual targets and things that means that you think, oh, it's miles away. I don't need to do anything yet. It's miles away. It's months and months away. So using 12-week goal setting targets and dates makes you a lot more in touch with them and a lot more likely to take action. And I started reading it thinking, oh, this isn't going to be all that, but actually I'm finding quite a nice number of quotes from it. And there was one particularly, it was all about how, let me just find the quote. Oh, here it is. It was about how without a compelling vision, you will discover that there's no reason to go through the pain of change. So there's some really quite nice concepts in it, and I would recommend a little read. It has got enough new ideas in it to make it worth a read.
Good.
And I think that's us done.
It is us done.
It is. And all within the hour. How marvellous. Awesome. Thank you very much, Judith. It's
no worries.
Lovely to be back, and I'll talk to you same place next week.
Yeah. Okay, see you then.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.